Very happy that everybody's here. I'm joined here by some heroines who have been VA whistleblowers constantly and acting out to protect veterans in their cause. When they see veterans are being abused, we need to protect the protectors. In the service I've given to the state, I have constantly passed whistleblower protections in Washington D.C. So when women like these women see a veteran being abused, they will be heard, and the problems that they see will be fixed. Let me turn it off to Christine Butler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. You want me to go ahead? I was employed by the Illinois Veterans Home in Anna, January 20th of 1995. I became an employee 6 months after the facility opened. I have served the veterans on a daily basis for 22 and a half years now. August 4th of 06, the facility's administrator resigned, and Ms. Duckworth put Trish Sims in as acting administrator. I was out on a leave for surgery and returned back November 14th of 06. The first day back on the job, Ms. Sims was in my face, yelling and screaming that she was in charge of the facility and that my subordinates would be reporting to her. I was second in charge of the facility, and some issues had been brought to our attention that the facility was not operating correctly, and I wrote some statements and submitted them to Ms. Duckworth and Ms. Rios, the Deputy Director of HR, in Springfield, December of 2006. As months went on, the problems continued to happen, and no one was addressing the issues at the facility internally. So around April 17th of 07, Ms. Sims went to the Illinois Department of Public Health or Public Aid office, and there was like 5 individuals sitting in there, and she asked them if they would like to help take care of a veteran privately on the side. She brought the 5 individuals back to the facility, did not run a healthcare background workers check on those individuals, and that is a state mandated law in any nursing home, SILA, any facility that is taking care of elderly or frail people, that you must run a background check to receive clearance for those individuals to make sure they do not have any disqualifying factors that would prohibit them from entering the facility and caring for a veteran or recipient, member, resident. Ms. Sims failed to run the background check, and we had a criminal by the name of Jesse Bell. He and his girlfriend had come into the facility April the 17th of 2007 to take care of our veteran. The two were arguing in the veteran's apartment, and Mr. Bell said to the veteran, told him to shut up, and the veteran started crying and shaking and asked our activity director to please ensure that they do not come back into his apartment because they made him nervous and he was scared of them. This information was brought to my attention by one of my subordinates. I then let Ms. Sims know that I was going to have them escorted out of the facility and off of the facility grounds. I drafted an email April 17th, emailed it to Director Duckworth and to Christy Rios, advising them of the issues that had taken place on April 18th of 07 when the abuse happened. I did not hear any word back from Ms. Duckworth. Ms. Sims did not converse with me what the next step would be. I was upset because the veteran had been abused and there had been no policies or procedures implemented to prevent this type of abuse from happening again. Fast forward up toward April 30th of 07, I emailed the director and advised her that I was going to be filing a complaint with Office of Inspector General and bring the issues to their attention in hopes that that agency would help us in addressing the issues that had taken place and to help us to prevent those actions from happening again in the future to any other veterans. It was my job to report it. I am a mandated reporter. I followed the Department of Veterans Affairs Employee Handbook on reporting violations of the law and unethical issues like that that were taking place. May 3rd, 2007, the director decided to come to the facility to address a few of us employees in a meeting and to get to the bottom of the problems. So I was pretty ecstatic that she was coming to meet with us. I had never met with her before. She had been employed by the agency and appointed by Governor Rod Blagojevich to be the director of the agency in November of 2006. So I was excited that she decided to come down May 3rd to discuss the issues with us in person. It was my chance to let her know what was going on versus emailing it. I would be able to meet with her face to face. During the meeting, she had looked at Ms. Sims and stated that if you were a lieutenant under my command, I would have already fired you. Rod Blagojevich pays me a lot of money to run this agency, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. She discussed some issues at hand, and she excused everybody and stated that she wanted to speak with me individually. It was around 10 minutes into the conversation that she stated she was going to terminate my employment with the agency, that I was insubordinate. I stated I was not insubordinate, that I had had exceptional evaluations for all my years of employment with the agency, and that could she please give me the information in writing to substantiate her ruling of finding insubordination on my behalf. She said she did not have anything, that she did not have to give me anything either because I was an at-will employee. I tried to proceed to tell her that I was not an at-will employee. I was a certified state employee, and that I was doing my job by reporting the abuse. And she became upset that I had reported issues to the Office of Inspector General. She stated that the agency, or that the Office of Inspector General would not hear it, that it was hearsay, that they get thousands of complaints a day, and that mine would not be looked at. I then proceeded to say that I didn't understand why my employment would be terminated, that I figured she would be happy that I brought forward the abuse of a veteran, considering she was a veteran herself and had served. She opened the door, announced to everyone in the office that she had terminated my employment. She asked for security to come in, to escort me to my office, and to monitor me while I cleaned out my office and escort me off of the property, that I was no longer an employee of the department and was not allowed back on the grounds. While I understand she has publicly been stating that I was only off, or that my termination was rescinded in 24 hours, it was not. I received a letter May 11th of 07 that had been backdated to May 3rd of 07 when she fired me, stating that I had been put on admin leave. She stated last night to a reporter that I had only been off one day and that it was the weekend. I was actually left at home for 5 months while she and her team continued to try to find something to justify her decision in firing me for coming forward and reporting veterans abuse. May 3rd, 07, at approximately 11:50 a.m., I was terminated from the Department of Veterans Affairs, Illinois Veterans Home in Anna. May 4th of 07, at around 11:20 a.m., she issued an email to her subordinate staff and admitted that she screwed up in firing me and asked that they please find something on me to justify her decision. So while Ms. Duckworth misleads the public into thinking that my termination had been reversed for reporting abuse, it had not been reversed. If it was reversed, I would have been brought back to work Friday morning, May 4th of 07. Instead, I was left at home depressed, would not get up and do my hair or my makeup. It was humiliating. In my local town, it's a small town, and everybody knows me, knows my family. I had people asking me, why did you do that? Just why didn't you turn your eye? Because it is my job to report abuse. I can't turn my eye on veterans, nor will I ever turn my eye or my back on any veterans. That is my job, to serve them on a daily basis. I have a grandfather that served in World War II, and I have an uncle that served in the Korean War. And that is our duty, to serve these men and women that fought for our freedom. And while it has been a stressful 9 years, because I continue to suffer certain ramifications for coming forward with the current agency, that's fine, because I know at night I can lay my head down on my pillow and know that I did the right thing. I commend all the veterans that fought for us. There is nothing that I would change today that I did back then. And if I ever witness abuse again, I will do the same thing, and I will come forward.
Denise, did you want to say anything about your experience?
I can just kind of follow up where Chrissy kind of left off. May 3rd, I'm Denise Goins. I was hired in March 2003 with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Came on April 4th, 2004 as executive secretary, and kind of found my niche pretty quickly. Love working for the guys. I have a rich history of veterans in my family. My father, my stepdad, my uncles, my brother all served in the military. So I also went to high school to be a history teacher. So I kind of found rich history there, working with these guys that had served our country. On May 3rd, when Miss Butler was escorted off the property, I had to go in. I was next after two other people. I got to go in for my chance to talk to Miss Duckworth. We were so excited for that roundtable meeting. We just really had high hopes that she was going to come down and address these issues and get some answers for us. Needless to say, within just a few hours, the business administrator, second in command, had been walked out. And because I had filed complaints and had been a part of the waiting list issues, I just knew I was next. Ms. Butler walked out the door of the office after Ms. Duckworth had dismissed her in front of all the staff. And I called my husband, who was at home with our child of 10 months, and I told him that Christy had just been fired and I was most likely going to be next. I was just dumbfounded that a new mother, I'm going to lose my job, and of course I was thinking about how I was going to take care of my child. That afternoon, when she called me into her office, she started asking me some questions, and she just looked at me, and she said, if you keep your mouth shut, the same thing won't happen to you that just happened to Miss Butler. And the most ironic thing was that she was telling me that Christy's car drove past that window. And I love being an American. I love our country, I love living here, and don't look at me and tell me to keep my mouth shut when I have witnessed abuse and the waiting list errors, because I didn't, and I'm quiet, usually, and I continue to hold my head up, and I continue to fight for what we believed in, for what we had stood up for. What people don't see is that after Ms. Butler was walked out, the next day at work, I had 6 disciplines waiting on my desk when I walked in from Ms. Sims, and immediately called Ms. Duckworth, and she stated to Ms. Sims, we decided yesterday that we were starting over. They were all dropped, but it just showed a continued harassment that continues. I was the one that had to sit in the meetings or in the office and listen to people laugh and snicker. Ms. Sims led the attacks on Ms. Butler and her character. We went through audits with the Marion VA. Everything Ms. Butler's office had done had come back completely unfound. Everything, her office was above margin. No errors, no issues, yet she still remained off on the sleeve. my concern is we go in to do our job every day. Every April, May, we take an ethics test that says we are to mandate, that we are to report if there are issues, if we see things that are incorrect. It's kind of disheartening when you do this and you stand up for things and you have documents and you have emails and you have things to show that we are not lying. We've had the same story for the last 9 years. Documents that prove Miss Butler was actually out for 5.5 months. The email that actually shows where she said, "I've screwed up, give me something to keep her fired." We can show this on paper. And it's disheartening to see her last night speak to a reporter and say it was only a day, or it was only a weekend. Like Miss Butler, if I saw it next week when I go back to work, if I saw abuse, if I saw something that was inappropriate, I'd have to report it again and continue the backlash that being a whistleblower, unfortunately being a whistleblower means that you're gonna, get retaliated against, you're gonna sacrifice. A lot of sleepless nights. Christy Butler is one of the strongest women I've ever met in my life, and soft-hearted, she'll give you the shirt off her back. And to see the emotional mess that she was in for 5.5 months was one of the hardest things I went through, to see that. Why? Because we spoke the truth, because we stood up for a veteran, because we stood up for the waiting list that was being ran incorrectly. I still stand firm on what we did, and I'd do it again tomorrow if we needed to. I just wish that there was more protection for people that would come forth and be truthful.
Thank you, Denise. Dr. Nee, would you like to speak a little bit?
Sure. My name is Dr. Lisa Nee. I just want to say that these 3 women are my heroes because they're still all serving within the VA system. I left Hines VA. I was an interventional cardiologist there for 2 years. What I saw at Hines was unbelievably unethical care of patients, what I'd never witnessed before in the private sector. And so for me, there's a theme of duplicity, that you can't harm or cause unnecessary death or commit fraud in the private sector, yet at the VA, you're allowed to do so. So my filing with the Office of Inspector General, which led to a report where they did substantiate some things and denied others, prompted me to go to try and meet with politicians across the state. Unfortunately, most people didn't want to meet about this issue, and that included Tammy Duckworth. I was able to meet with her when Jermaine Clarno, who I knew through Hines, was meeting with her, and she said, "I think you should come along." And the problem with the OIG report was that patients were found to be harmed, and there were delays in tests, and there were people that were known to have died waiting for tests, but nothing was going to be done about it. No one was going to be held accountable, and patients were not going to be notified. When I asked Ms. Duckworth if she wanted the evidence of what I had brought forth, she said no. When I reminded her about the report from the OIG, she said she had not read it, which I found quite fascinating, that you would now, in the press, that you're running for office, take credit for initiating an investigation, but never actually read the report. I'm not really sure how that works, but. And then she likes to take credit for the Office of Special Counsel investigation, which is ongoing, which clearly was initiated by me, and I have the report here. You can find it on Document Cloud, and it even states that the allegations were brought forth by the whistleblower, Dr. Lisa Nee. So you can't take credit for things that you didn't do. You can't discredit people who are trying to bring forth social justice. And I kind of look at it in a global sense. I know voters are getting tired of a lot of things right now, but to me it boils down to, if I'm a physician and I bring you evidence of patient harm and death, and you choose to not act on it or ignore it, and then more patients are harmed and died after that, you may not be the hand that killed those patients, but you are definitely the arm. You ignored the information, you took credit for things you didn't do, and you've allowed it to perpetuate. And I get to judge who I am based on my actions and inactions. So what I did was appropriate, coming forward was appropriate. The Office of Special Counsel is still representing me. So these are facts, figures that are all discoverable. And my truth hasn't changed in over 3 years. Other people's truths seem to change day by day. So the bottom line is, who do you want to go to? Who do you trust is going to respond appropriately under stress or at a time when you need commitment to the law? To me, it's somebody who's not duplicitous.
Jermaine?
Hi, my name's Jermaine Clarno. I'm a social worker at Hines VA. I'm also the local union president for AFGE. My journey in trying to report fraud, waste, and abuse at Hines has been going on for a long time. I think the women here all mentioned that we have a chain of command process, and in that chain of command, it tells you that you go to the first person, you go to the second, and you keep going until those issues are resolved. And I did that internally, and with no success. I believed, naively, that if I went to Congress, if I went to legislators, if I especially went to Tammy Duckworth, who I'm one of her constituents, and I told her and I showed her what's going on at Hines, that clearly she would do something. In the past I've seen so many interviews, clips of her getting very angry at people that aren't treating veterans with dignity and respect. It's easy to find. I expected that woman to do that same thing when she heard of the abuse of veterans at Hines. That's what I expected. I did not expect that I would be treated as a criminal. I did not think that I would see things in the paper because there's a race, discrediting me, minimizing the work I've done, and highlighting what she feels that she did to try to help the veterans at Hines. To say that, first of all, a couple things. She's false in saying that she's the reason why investigations happen at Hines. That is not true. I have documents. I have letters. I have everything in writing. I don't think she has that. To substantiate what she's saying, the two reports that she's taking credit for, the Office of Inspector General, I will tell you that this is the timeline. This is just one case of reporting wrongdoing at Hines. As a union leader, I have many more of these. I have many more cases where employees have come forward to report and have evidence of wrongdoing, and it continues to this day. Nobody is held accountable. And it's really disheartening when somebody has the attention of this country because of her, her time and serving, and I respect her serving our country. I think she is a war hero, but when you come back here and if you're not taking action and having the platform to do so, and you just decide to take a back seat because it's politically correct, I have a huge problem with that. I'm the one who sees our veterans every single day as I walk through the Hines hallways. I see our veterans that are in wheelchairs, that are blinded, that have the effects of war every single day. And for us to turn our back, especially the people that have the power to do something, I feel, just as Dr. Nee said, you have a hand in what's happening. I'll tell you, I want to, since I have this opportunity to tell my side, I first emailed Duckworth's office on October 3rd, 2012, and I reported retaliation at Hines for people for speaking up internally. I thought at that point she would be appalled that employees that are stepping up and saying, no, these are not employees that are saying we ran out of paper in the copy machine or we don't have any more black pens. These are people saying we are harming veterans. And I don't know if some of you might already know, recently we were serving cockroaches to our veterans on their trays. Most recently we were leaving veterans in a morgue, one veteran for over 90 days. 90 days as this veteran liquefied in our morgue. I can't even imagine if that was any of your family members, truly any of mine. That is just horrible. We have veterans who don't have families, they don't have the financial means. There are policies in place to help veterans. People turn their back. And these are all things that have been in the news that Congresswoman Duckworth knows about. And she hasn't taken the right appropriate steps to make sure that that never happens again and hold people accountable. That's a big piece. So October 3rd, 2012, I first went to her. I also sent her another email November 12th, 2012, alerting her of more harassment and that we as a union were doing an informational picket outside of Heinz. I did not get a response. I asked for her to attend. She did not come. January 3rd, 2013, I made a report. I was physically assaulted by a physician, a service line chief, as I was representing another physician who was being retaliated against. I sent an email and it made a disclosure to Congresswoman Duckworth's office. No response. I also sent another email, a letter, January 25th, 2013, about concerns, again, more retaliation. January 27th, I sent an email requesting that I meet with Congresswoman Duckworth in DC. I was going to be there for some union business. I didn't get to meet with her personally, but I did meet with a couple of her staff. And the response I got is, well, Tammy Duckworth gets her medical care at Heinz, and she loves the care she gets at Heinz. Well, I wish every veteran was treated like a congresswoman and have the red carpet rolled out and the flags as you drive into the front of the hospital. Every veteran should have that same welcoming. February 9, 2013, Dr. Nee made the disclosure. Not Congresswoman Duckworth, as she is stating recently. It was Dr. Nee. February 13, 2013, I met with Duckworth's office and Senator Durbin's office. I told them about one of the disclosures of Dr. Nee, and the list goes on, is that there were echocardiograms in boxes. Hundreds of veterans whose echoes never got read. And by the time Dr. Nee was reading them, veterans had died. And guess what happened when she went and reported that to her supervisor? Her office was moved. I think that was the time you were moved into an office with asbestos? Or no air conditioning. I can't remember if that
Hard to
time
keep
or
track
not.
of all the retaliation.
So that's what happens when you say this just is not ethically right. On March 4th, I got a letter from Tammy Duckworth's office saying that she was sending a letter, a VA inquiry, based on my meeting in February. So it took a couple weeks, but I did get that letter. That was after I went to her and said, you know, we have these issues. As time goes on, and I have a whole lot of other emails and correspondence I had with her office, but it was until the OIG report had come out. April 16th, I emailed, Congresswoman Duckworth's office emailed me with the report that I had already gotten, and I responded immediately that next day and said, this report is not accurate. Do I send you the information? What do I do? And the response was, that is not necessary at this time. Let me just tell you just a couple things that the OIG substantiated in their report. One of the things I can tell you right off the top of my head, with a couple notes here, we substantiated 2 patients had questionable indications for coronary bypass surgery. I've learned a lot of medical terms in this journey, but for people that don't understand, that's open heart surgery. Questionable. We substantiated that preoperative planning was inadequate for a patient who underwent coronary artery bypass surgery. We found that the coronary interventions may have been inappropriate for 9 patients who had undergone cardiac catheterizations during 2010 and 13. For each of the 9 patients, images and reports were independently evaluated and agreed that the coronary stenosis had been overestimated.
And I just want to comment with Jermaine, the Office of Medical Inspectors report under their professional review findings, which I know these reports are lengthy and it's difficult for people to wrap their head around it, but when you break down the percentages, 82.4% of the cardiac ultrasounds were inadequate. 52.9% of the cardiac ultrasounds did not have a proper diagnosis or conclusion. 42.9% of cardiac catheterizations did not meet national standards, rendering them worthless. Can you imagine a private healthcare system putting out these numbers? We get it right about 50% of the time. I mean, it would be unbelievable what the press would do if Kaiser Permanente came out with numbers like this. And yet, this is all fine and good.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the many things that they substantiated, another issue that is important, is that they substantiated that patients did not have symptoms to warrant open heart surgery.
So you're taking people to the operating room, you're lying to them to get their consent, you're putting them under general anesthesia on a pump for 8 hours and putting them at risk for stroke and permanent brain damage. You're taking a saw and cutting open their chest against their will, and at the end of the day, they don't even know that you did that. That's a problem.
And there's plenty of documentation. Most recently, there was the Justice Department went after a private physician for doing the exact same things that were done at Hines. You want to know what happened to the person who did these things? They still have a job. There's been no accountability. There's been nothing. In the private sector, this physician is serving time in a jail. So these are the issues that we brought to Congresswoman Duckworth. After I got this email, and I was kind of flabbergasted, it's not necessary at this time. You can follow up with them for now. So, okay, I'm going to follow up again with the Office of Inspector General that already came out with a report, and I'm asking for your assistance. So you wrote a templated letter ordering the investigation, but you're not going to help with the findings, and you're not going to help in making people be held accountable so that our veterans are safe. After that, Dr. Nee and I then went and met with Congresswoman Duckworth on September 3rd, 2014. And I had met with her personally a couple times, and the reception I had always received from her was very warm and welcoming. I'm a union president, and so it was always very welcoming. This meeting in September 9th was nothing like that. We were greeted with, what would be the best word you would describe? Hostility.
Hostility. Who are you? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Who let you in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very similar to what you had reported. The demeanor had completely changed. I kind of thought, what did we do wrong? What's going on? So I had asked her if she saw the OIG report. She's like, no. Now, the OIG report came back out in April. This is now September. Veterans had died. Veterans were getting open heart surgery that was not medically warranted. Stents and procedures were being put in veterans. And certain physicians were getting bonuses based on their productivity for doing these procedures. And you hadn't read the report? So that was upsetting, and she got very defensive. The meeting ended very abruptly, and we were asked to leave. You know, I think it's very important that, you know, politics aside, and this is an election year, but, you know, we have to really look at individuals and look at the facts and help people to understand truly what's been going on and what we need for the state of Illinois for our veterans. Mentioned earlier, and Dr. Nee mentioned this too, our lives have turned upside down because we did what we're supposed to do. I am supposed to report fraud, waste, and abuse. I sign training every year. I took an oath my first day working for the federal government, saying that I will protect this country from enemies, domestic and foreign. And to me, when you have enemies that are domestic, that are not doing all that they possibly can to take care of veterans and choose to do things that's politically correct, I have a really huge problem with that. Our stories, we've never met until today, but our stories are similar because there's one person that has a common thread. And there are so many other employees that try to report wrongdoing and don't do what we've done for years, just fighting for our veterans. This is absolutely ridiculous. We should be able to talk to one person and say, there's echoes being stored in banker's boxes in a mysterious closet, and someone go, oh my God, that's horrible,
Right.
we'll take care of that right now.
And that does happen in the private sector.
Mhm.
That's what happens. It's not that this is something new to me working as a physician. I mean, I was trained to do that. So coming into Hines, you're there to take care of people and you're there to do the right thing. So to be retaliated, you know, for doing the right thing is very foreign to people who are there to take care of patients.
It's such a mixed message. You know, we get emails every day, our veterans, our heroes, our nation's heroes. It's on out our plaque, our nation's heroes. And then you go, but our nation's heroes are being harmed.
They're
You know,
actually-
the cockroaches that were in the kitchen, that had been going on for years. 7 years ago, cockroaches came on trays of veterans I was serving in the inpatient mental health facility. You know, and I turned the trays back and I ordered them pizza and paid for it out of my pocket, and that was not popular. I almost got written up for buying gifts for veterans. You know, I was trying to buy them food without insects. So 7 years later, they're finally doing something about the kitchen. So, any questions, or, I know we threw a lot at you guys.
Questions, thoughts, you guys?
Do you choose to work at Heinz and do you choose to work at Anna?
We still
We
work at
do.
Anna.
I work at Heinz.
Are you private sector now or?
Anyone got questions?
I would like to clarify something for the record. Ms. Duckworth has quoted numerous statements on different reasons why she wrongfully terminated me on May 3rd of '07. Still not sure which one she wants to stick to, but she did state in one quote that I was physically in her face, screaming or yelling at her. For the record, I have a permanent disability. A third of my airway is restricted. I have left vocal cord paralysis. I only have one vocal cord that works. I have an implant in my throat. This is the voice of the implant that I was left with. I aspirate and choke quite frequently. So,